Hi, it's Pete the Polymath. Look, I've had a bit of flack from yesterday's YouTube. I rushed it a bit, and I could have done it better, and I'll endeavour to make things better in the future. I'll put the effort in. I've been a bit slack in that regard. I've just been churning them out without putting that little bit of finesse. I've been producing the cake without the icing, without the little bits of hundreds and thousands and sparkly little ant kind of things made out of sugar on the top. Like, you need things dressed up a bit, and I'm not the one who dresses up very much at all. In fact, this is the most dressed up I get every year. I'll tell you a little anecdote about what it is that I am. My attitude to everything. You've heard me rant about me being the best radiographer in the world because I broke the spell of all of these like 500,000 other people in the profession now, and going all the way back to the very beginning. And they hadn't realised something incredibly important, and I did. And so then through that, I turned it into an art form rather than just the means by which I produce satisfactory results. Anyway, so I needed to go to the national conference at Hobart. And so I needed to fly down there. And so I flew down with my electric push bike, of course, and I had to then assemble my bike at the airport and then ride 17 kilometres in. And so I was the only one to attend that conference on a bike. And there's the thing when you arrive at a conference, you've got to front up to this desk in the day ahead, a day before it, and sort of you have to sort of organise with them certain things. You're saying you've arrived, and you get little bags, little show bags, and little things like what they call lanyards and all that kind of stuff. And the woman behind the counter says, and here's the address to upload your PowerPoint display to. And I said, I haven't got a PowerPoint display. In fact, I've got nothing. I am winging it. Shock and horror. But I had to then organise amongst the reps who were working there in their various sort of little stalls and stuff in order to get the equipment that I would need in order to demonstrate what it was that I needed to demonstrate. But most of what I was doing was like a virtual demonstration. And I was doing a survey of the crowd using a secret ballot system, which means you all close your eyes. Those who say yes, hold up your hands. Now those who say no, hold up your hands. Now, my witnesses, what numbers do you report on those numbers? And, okay, it's like 3/4 of the people there, and these were not students at all. These were the cream of the cream who decide that they will go to the conference and update their skills and take all those grand messages back to their own departments, and lots of elders and stuff like that. And well, 3/4 of them failed. And some of these elders have come up to me next morning and saying, after your paper, we argued all the way through the night. And then we woke up this morning and at breakfast, we started arguing again. Anyway, so I have this particular approach. And I'm dealing now, like the things that sort of caused me to get off my backside and start doing this stuff was basically the war in Iran, where it's you can actually see, if you study it, I'm actually putting something like 4 hours a day into listening to the people on the inside, the people on the outside, the people on the right and the people on the left. I'm looking at historians about looking back through the history of Iran, and I'm looking at the historians who are going back through the political history of America and the origin of Israel and all those kinds of things. Now, most people don't do that. But as a polymath who needs to deal with this situation and then be able to use that prepared spontaneity that Pete Crofts taught me, that I mentioned yesterday, I need to be able to be fluent with the subject. I need to be able to express it in certain kind of ways that make sense to you. And it's not rehearsed. There's no bullet points. They're not really prepared. I'm just going into, like any performance, I'm going into saying, well, I have a place to start perhaps, and there's something I might want to cover at certain parts there. But apart from that, one thing leads to another. Now, apart from all of that sort of horrific war stuff, there's also, you may have heard of Cyclone Narelle that is currently going through the upper part of Northern Territory. It's gone through the York Peninsula and stuff like it, and it seems to be the biggest cyclone for since 1899 or something ridiculous then. And the storm surge that was recorded back then was 12 metres. And it wiped out like 400 and something people who were basically just trying to find pearls in the ocean up there. And back in those days, of course, you had absolutely no idea what was going to happen tomorrow. And so we had that advantage. So all the people up there in these little communities and these islands and stuff, they're just jumping in aeroplanes and they're flying out of there because they know that they're not going to survive, and they know they're going to go back and just find utter desolation from where the places they lived. And the mines that provided all the work up there, totally, completely gone, and will require at least a year to be brought back. And so the economics of the thing, like and this cyclone crosses it crosses the coast in 3, maybe 4 different places. It crosses before it gets to Queensland, as it leaves Queensland, as it crosses into Northern Territory, and then as it leaves Western Australia. Right? And so that's what they expect, right? And I've been up there. I've been to all that place. You might see it on the, pull it up on the map and get someone to explain it to these, get the satellite images and stuff and begin to watch it and stuff. Like, I've been to Burralula. I worked at Jabiru, maybe on sort of 6 or 7 different occasions, but just one day, but that's it. And I've worked at Maningrida. I worked there for basically 7 weeks, but that involved like 4 weeks of heading out from there into the various kind of outstations to take X-rays of the Indigenous community to look for TB and heart conditions and other underlying sort of pathologies that might just happen in a place where you don't really get much health care. So, and that was back in 85, so it's a long time ago. But anyway, I am familiar with that area. But yeah, like, the reason why this cyclone is going through is because the Coral Sea is 1 degree hotter. And we're going into something called the El Nino. Now, this is unusual because there's usually a gap between that past one finishes and this one beginning. And that seems to be really, really short. And this one seems to be really, really intense. It's coming after Australia has had this absolutely crazy year where we had absolute record temperatures in many places going up to like 49 degrees Celsius. And a third of Europe in America. Well, look at what's happening in America for your winter. It's been the hottest winter over all of your West Coast, the hottest winter ever. Whereas over on the East Coast, it's been your coldest winter, where the top, like third, like within that 3%, it's been really, really cold there. And now this is what happens when the climate system reacts to the conditions that we have caused. Like, we've changed that by just adding these trillions of tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. And well, we've got to get through all that. We've got to, and so that's why I've been sort of recommending you watch Dr. Gilbs, and I'm also going to I've watched Climate Adam, who's another absolute of specialist in atmospheric physics. And he has a PhD. I want you to listen to some of these experts and use that kind of information coming from those experts to motivate yourself to know more about what climate is. You don't have to be an expert. You need to know enough so that you understand what the experts are talking about. That's one of the things that I'm recommending. Now, I wanted to talk a tiny bit about a few other things, and one is about intelligence. Now, there's some kind of, it's very difficult to work out someone's intelligence quota because they've got a testing system that's arbitrary in some sort of way, and it relies on your background knowledge and all that sort of stuff. And they say overall that about half of your intelligence comes from your genetics. And about half of it comes from what happens to your brain, maybe even before you're born, according to how many microplastics and forever chemicals your mother's been exposed to. And what kind of birth you actually had, whether it was a Caesar or whether it was a natural, and then the conditions that you encountered after birth, like your imprinting with your parents and things like that, and then how you integrate yourself into that world, right? You have to try and figure out what you are and what the hell is going on and how you become part of it. And so some of us do that really well, and some of us don't do it very well at all. And it doesn't matter how much you were intended to be smart, well, you might not reach your potential because, well, it was just you're born in the wrong place at the wrong time, to the wrong culture, the wrong town, the wrong sort of thing, you know. Anyway, so I describe this in another way. It's good to use analogies, right? So imagine the genetics are a cake, right? Yeah, and you want to make a cake, and you've got to grab all these different sort of ingredients. So genetically, like I'm the analogy, like there's the stuff that makes you tall, the stuff that makes your liver work and makes your immune system function and makes your reproductive system work. Okay, and like all these different, you've got like maybe 30 different systems that are working, all have to work all together in certain kind of ways to actually sort of be successful. But anyway, there's all the ingredients you put into the cake. Now, each of those ingredients, it can be some really shonky kind of low quality ingredient, or it can be the highest quality ingredient you can possibly find, right? Anyway, all the ingredients, you chuck them in a bowl as you conceived, and they're all just stirred around, and then conception happens, and you've got the two sort of genetic things taking the immortal kind of thing that's always been alive, and it gives it this unique identity. It becomes a one, and then it divides and becomes two ones, and then it continues to divide. Now, how many times does it divide before you were born? Right? And I've dealt with this with my theory of numbers, like being able to count in powers of billions using three-dimensional counting systems. So you can look it up, and you probably heard some stuff, but do some investigation on that. I've been talking about that. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but there might be people who have not heard that kind of stuff. Look up billions of billions. Now, how many cell divisions? If you interrogate each cell at like a normal full-term birth, 42. That magic number, right? And if you're just born just a little bit too late, you've actually been gestating for 42 weeks. Anyway, we're not going to get into the numerology of what it is we are and stuff. I just had to jump back in. I was doing the editing and I realised that I hadn't actually finished the cake analogy. Right, so you have all the ingredients all mixed into the bowl, and that's really, really good. But then you have to cook it. You have to bung it into the oven and let it stay in there at some specific temperature for a certain amount of time before it comes out, and there is your wonderful cake. Now that is life. That oven part is life. With a cake, it can come out a sloppy, horrible mess that's almost inedible, except children will still eat it if you trick them. If you overdo it, it'll come out burnt, scorched, and toughened on the outside, and it will not be a pleasant experience at all. You'll still say, well, it's a cake, but not cake as we know it. There is some kind of ideal temperature for an ideal amount of time in order for it to come out and be absolutely perfect. Now that is what the life does. We live our life and we are cooking our own cake. and we set all these parameters, and whatever ingredients have made us what we are, well, they will end up hopefully being the perfect cake. But otherwise, if you start with inferior ingredients and do the right cooking, well, you still have a pretty good cake. But if you start off with bad ingredients and you have a bad cooking experience, well, you can still come back from there perhaps, but it's almost inedible, Like it's not going to win any prize. My mother left school when she was 15 and started working in a bank. And she didn't tell her father, who was recently sort of made a widower, and my mother had 5 younger siblings, and so she sort of decided, well, she's got to become the breadwinner. She's got to pull out. Anyway, her father storms into the bank on her first day and says, "You're not going to work here. You're going to get out of this bank and you're going to go to school to finish your matriculation, and then you're going to become a school teacher." And so that's what she did. And unfortunately, the family didn't get richer. They didn't really sort of make it anywhere because my grandfather just he had a paper run. He was selling newspapers to 1/3 of the local city, and so on my father's side. And on my mother's side, out of all of those, the most qualified of the entire lot was my mother, right? And there's 3 on my father's side and 5 on my mother's side. It's a decent sort of bit. But my mother was the highest qualified. Now, the second highest qualified were 2 nurses. But back in those days, it wasn't a university kind of thing. You just did an apprentice kind of thing, and you came through. You had to do a few sort of tests. You had to be pretty smart to get through. You really had to do your work. But it wasn't the high levels of education you received in nursing, and that's fine. They become great nurses. They excelled in their field and became wonderful mothers and had wonderful lives, right. And but my father, his first job was actually sort of a bullock team, like a bullock team leaving sort of Victoria and going across to South Australia to help a family move. And so look at a bullock. If you don't know, a bullock is actually just a cow, a big cow that's bred just to haul things around. You haul a plough with it, and you can haul these wagons and stuff. That was his first job, just to do that. And so he throughout my childhood he was working 60 hours a week, working shit jobs in factories. And it was often when I was very small, it was night school, night shift kind of stuff, right? And I've got memories, and I'll tell you my earliest actually sort of memory that I can actually sort of put a date on, and that is the birth of my younger brother, who was 2.5 years younger than me. But there's a memory that existed before that. And that was when my mother tried to explain how God was going to give me either a younger brother or younger sister. And she explained that it can only be done by women. So men can't have babies, but women can. And God works through them to give them babies. And I thought, oh, I'm a man. I'd like to have babies just like God intended. I'm left out of this entire thing. I remember thinking that, and I would have been probably 2 years and 2 months, maybe 3 months old. Some ridiculously young age. They say, my siblings and my parents would say that I didn't start talking until I was 3. But I could understand an enormous amount of what was being said around me before that. My level of comprehension of what was going on was really quite high. And so, so we're just ad-libbing through life, and some of us just have more ability to do the ad-libbing. And so I don't even know what I'm going to call this YouTube. Like yesterday, I called it the comedy. Some kind of thing. It's had some comedy in it, and I thought that's a good handle to sort of to catch on to sort of the algorithm and get these people sort of to start doing their stuff and things like that. And so it's a bit of, like, I'm not cheating the system. I'm just trying to spread the word in certain kind of ways and stuff. And maybe I need to be a bit more gimmicky and stuff. And so I decided that I will get a bit sort of gimmicky now, and I'll try and do a trick that no one else in the world is capable of doing. That's going to have to be the one.